Boom. All right. We have Aaron Kubal here. Sam's joining us as well. What's up, Aaron?
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here.
So let's just dive right into it. Can you give us a little intro on yourself, kind of currently what you're doing, and a little bit of background?
Yeah, I'm a chiropractor and I do telehealth exclusively, so only online appointments with people, online consultations, which is obviously a little bit different for a chiropractor because I'm not cracking and rubbing people, but you know, makes for an interesting work life. And then I think a lot of people best know me through social media, TikTok and Instagram. And yeah, that's the bulk of it. Been in practice for a little over 2 years now, so still new to the game, but it's been good so far.
Can we go into when you initially decided to start creating these TikTok videos when you were in school and what that initial video was?
Yeah. So, well, my content, it's meant to be like patient facing, good pain and rehab information, but also a lot of it does involve a lot of like combating misinformation, quote unquote, like debunking shit all the time. And obviously, being within chiropractic, some of that gets a little sticky because there's just so much to debunk. And obviously, being a chiropractor on the inside and starting that process while I was in chiro school was met with a lot of I ruffled feathers like often. I was a habitual feather ruffler, especially as a student. I remember the first one I did ever was like the crux of it was, do you need an adjustment? And like the end point was like nobody ever needs one, but you can have one as long as we don't like give some weird convoluted explanation for why cracking your back might help. And even that like kind of thing resulted in like pushback from classmates and teachers. And then I remember the first one that ever went viral. I had been making them for like 2 weeks, like daily TikToks, and and I was like, it was like the middle of the night. I made one that took like 5 minutes to make, and it was like a juxtaposition of my classmates in Cairo school, and it was like me pretending to be them, and they're all like really bought in. I'm like, oh, I'm cracking T5 to get the right rotation to fix the this and that, and then it was juxtaposed over me like acting as myself in Cairo school with my arms folded, being like really skeptical and being like, this all seems like made up bullshit. Like it was like 15 seconds of that was kind of the energy of it. And that one popped off and went viral and had like 1 million views over the next 24 hours. And I was like genuinely like scared to go to school because I was like, am I gonna fucking get expelled or in trouble or yelled at? And pretty much just expanded from there. So yeah, it was definitely an interesting process having that perspective and then making that perspective more and more and more public within my last few months of school. But the real reason I started on TikTok was because I was already had a predisposition towards telehealth. I knew I wanted online care to be part of what I did. And that was even before COVID. Like I started planning and looking into telehealth a year before COVID actually happened, just because it aligned so well with like my own values in patient care and the things that I think make up good quality musculoskeletal care. Like telehealth to me just seemed like such a natural fit. So I was already going that way. And a lot of people were telling me to get on TikTok and start pumping out Instagram just because if I was going to provide an online service, it would make sense to try and build an online presence. So that was the only reason that I went into TikTok in the first place, was people just told me it was a good opportunity. And sure enough, I got really lucky and ended up with like 100,000 followers just falling into my lap like 1 month before graduation. So yeah, that was kind of how it all sort of started.
Okay, we're back. So the initial posting of these videos, when your classmates and professors saw these, was there any direct confrontation that occurred in person? Or were there ever periods where there was actually a good discussion and back and forth and kind of a meeting in the middle?
Well, I was already someone who would like raise my hand and push back like during lectures in class. So that part was not really all that new. Um, it was surprising though that like how much of the confrontation was not like directly face to face, but like I would hear about it secondhand with like people who were like my friends, but also had their foot in like camps of people who didn't like me. So like they would tell me and it would all circulate, and I would just find out more and more people were saying, hey, what's Aaron Kubal's fucking problem? And it would just kind of get a little uncomfortable. But there weren't that many direct confrontations. I did have a few instances where like I would have really good discussions with classmates. They would never go anywhere just because I think at the end of the day, I think our values between me and a lot of my classmates differed a lot. Like for me, I just really value having a scientific backbone for the things that I'm going to anchor myself to. And for them, a lot of their values were more anchored on their own personal experiences. And if like, they're like, well, I saw this happen, or I experienced it this way, then this is the way that it seems to be to me, and I'm okay with that. And for them, like, that was enough of a hill to stand on. And some people just weigh different things differently, I guess. And sometimes you're not going to be able to find common ground if values are just that different. And it's not always worth trying to bridge that gap. So there wasn't a whole lot of direct confrontation, but sometimes there were interesting discussions. A lot of them, though, instigated by me, like raising my hand during class and talking mad shit. But I was doing that before the video things started.
When you started the actual process, you finished school and you started going fully remote, what were these initial barriers that you quickly ran up against with either the logistics of running these telehealth calls or the way you started the framing of the discussions or these consults? What did it initially look like, and where you found some kind of quick barriers?
Honestly, I did not like. I had a really smooth start to my time in practice and using telehealth. I really didn't run up against a whole lot of issues. I mean, it was sick because like I said, like 100,000 followers fell into my lap a month before graduation. So like I had demand already for people wanting to book with me before I was even licensed. And as soon as I became licensed and started letting people book, I just kind of got rolling and started kind of finding my way through it and navigating. There were changes that were made, and I'm always changing things about my approach even now. But there was nothing really that stood out to me in the early stages as far as like a significant barrier or significant challenge, at least as far as patient care goes, which might surprise people because like I didn't really feel like I had much of a framework to go off of as far as what a telehealth practice should look like. I mean, Jacob Harden was like my main guy as far as helping me figure out a way to set it up and get started. So he kind of helped provide some of that for me, but there wasn't like much of a model to follow or a template. I was kind of just trial and error, feeling it out, but there wasn't really any significant, roadblocks in the early stages.
What about now that you're, roughly 2 years into this or so?
Yeah, a little over 2 years. Yeah.
What has evolved from the way you've led your practice in this telehealth model?
Honestly, it might surprise people who listen to this particular platform being E3. The biggest change that I've made over the last year to year and a half is I give less and less exercise programs than ever before. Like in the beginning, everyone got a rehab program, like structured exercise prescription, the whole deal. And boy, especially looking back, I don't think anybody overthought exercise prescription more than I did at that point in my life. And it wasn't like overthinking it as far as like, like coming up with the perfect exercise to fix the perfect dysfunction or whatever. Like I was never of that frame of mind, but I would just spend so much time making it so detailed and so like fine tuned to the person to the point where like I was probably tweaking things that wouldn't actually make any sort of difference for outcomes or patient satisfaction or anything. And really the change that happened was I just felt like as time kept passing, I got more and more tired of just sending people these lists of things to do and telling them what to do. And as months passed, like I felt like I could do a better job and provide more value to each person by just teaching them the general thought process of what goes into making those rehab decisions and just giving that to them in lay terms and then helping them navigate kind of making those choices for themselves. So the shift that really occurred was it became less of me telling people what to do as far as exercises and load management and all those things, and more so me teaching them how I make those choices and then helping them figure out how to apply that to themselves, so that they could kind of integrate that within exercise they were already doing or goals they were already working towards, or, you know, just more, it was less of like me giving them a fish and more of me teaching them to fish, that kind of thing. That was more of the shift that happened. So it's a lot more advice and verbal guidance now, and a lot less of like, here's a PDF of shit to do, go do it. Which I've definitely enjoyed more because I feel like people are learning more from it. I feel like they actually understand why they're doing what they're doing a lot better than they used to before. And it's a lot less work on me. Cause like I said, I would overthink these exercise programs so much and spend so much time that just didn't need to be spent on exercise prescription. And now a lot more of my time is spent on communication and making sure they understand why we're doing what we're doing, and how to apply these ideas and like actually develop a skill set of self-management rather than me, you know, giving them like a script for self-management, if that kind of makes sense.
Are there any resources that you do send over to them after the initial call or consult, whether it's, you know, there's that like Peter Sullivan, I think it's that 10 facts on low back pain, or anything where it is more education based and, oh, I can refer back to this, or is it still truly the discussion and y'all's back and forth that is the primary piece?
Yeah. Well, because I am like, it is a lot of it is verbal. That's a lot of stuff to like learn and remember. So I do send like summaries of everything that we've talked about on each email or on each consult, and I'll send that via email so they've got things to refer back to. So that'll be some of the resources that I send now is just really basic stuff like, you know, like the pain traffic light for how to approach pain during exercise, that kind of thing. Things like kind of a basic regression ladder. So like either how to find a tolerable point of entry for exercise, like I'll give a nice written framework for that, or how to regress certain exercises or certain movements or activities in the event of like a flare up. Like those are the types of resources that I'll send now just so they have those tools in their back pocket. But a lot of people, one of the primary services that I provide now is just basic email support. So if people run into those issues, they pay to have unlimited email access to me and get a timely response. So they can always reach out to me if those things happen too, and I can kind of in writing guide them through using that same type of stuff. And then also like my patients, a lot of them are familiar with my content, so they know that I do have a lot of educational resources at my disposal. I will send, like, people will ask me for articles on EDS, or people will ask me for information on disc herniations or like the prognosis of a disc herniation, things like that. Sometimes patients are actually interested in that stuff and they'll literally ask me for it. So in those events, I'll send it. But I am also cautious about like information overload. So it's not me putting that stuff on them. I do actually have like curious patients who will ask for those things.
What, and you've alluded to this in the past, but what is your primary patient population?
It's mostly people dealing with persisting pain issues. But then outside of that, it is really a mixed bag. Like I'll get anywhere from real competitive athletes or power lifters to people who don't exercise at all, which is really interesting because I don't know how I get such a mixed bag like that. I guess it's just because of the nature of social media and TikTok and people finding me that way. But it definitely does tend to be more so people with persisting issues. And that's partially because I think I make more patient facing content for people with persisting issues. But also because a lot of the content that I make on acute, pain situations is about natural history and the natural progression of how those things tend to work themselves out. So obviously if I'm pumping out a shitload of information on that, a lot of the people who watch that stuff are not going to feel like they need to book an appointment with me because they're well aware that the problem's probably going to sort itself out because they've heard me say it 40 times. And then on the rare one-off instances that I do get somebody dealing with an acute pain situation, I usually don't have to like take them on as a client. I can give them some pretty basic advice and say, if this doesn't sort itself out within the next 8 to 10 weeks, you can hit me up again, but you're probably going to be fine. I mean, that's not all I say, but you guys understand that's the general gist of what ends up getting said for a lot of those situations. So yeah, most of my time is spent working with people with persistent pain, and then outside of that, it's a wide range of different types of people.
Within persistent pain, has there been any, let's say, starting the first few months into practice, now a little over 2 years out, is there any big takeaways you've had from, it's obviously a wide population of those with persistent pain, but things that you've just picked up on with just the sheer volume of people you've seen that have been trying to manage and struggle with multiple years or decades of chronic pain?
Yeah, I think the two biggest things that I've learned from that, one, I've moved further and further away from like the classic explain pain, pain neuroscience education type approaches to talking to people about their pain. I really don't do any of that anymore. Like I used to be all about like the Lorimer-Moseley pain buffer thing, especially in my first probably like 6 months. And I don't talk to people about pain that way anymore. And I really don't even explain necessarily pain to people anymore. I actually spend a lot more of my time having them explain it to me so that they really feel like they know that I understand what they've been going through. That's definitely a shift that I've made as far as patient education and communicating goes. And then definitely a big respect for, and this is something I say a lot in my videos, I think it's really important when working with people with persisting symptoms to kind of shift our perspective in rehab away from like a fitness perspective of applying our approach and more towards a pain perspective. And like I've talked about this in my videos a lot of times, but what I basically mean by that is, I'll give an example. So like one of my first ever patients was a guy with really disabling, persisting low back pain to the point where he couldn't, like, he could barely dress himself, could barely bathe, like prepare himself meals. I mean, this guy and he was out of his work on disability. Like he couldn't do anything. So one of his primary goals was to get back to working again. So we first started him off with just a basic walking program, because obviously he's got to be able to walk out to his car, walk to the office, walk about the office, get home. So that's kind of where we started. And we found that this guy could tolerate about 15 minutes of laps around his cul-de-sac. That was kind of our initial starting point with our rehab for him. And so we started working on that and spent a couple weeks building his tolerance for it. In the beginning, that was on like the edge of his tolerance. And then after a couple weeks, he was getting more comfortable with it. So I told him, I was like, okay, it's great that you can do this, but this ain't going to get you back to doing your job and functioning the way you want to. Now we got to turn up the dial a little bit, because just like when a doctor prescribes medication to a patient, once they build a tolerance, you're not going to keep getting the desired effect. You have to increase the dosage just a bit. So I asked him, what do you think is a good next step for you? Right? We're doing 15 minutes of laps right now. What should we turn that up to? And he said, I don't know, 30 minutes. And from a fitness perspective, right, 30 minutes of walking for most able-bodied people, probably not a huge deal. We're not asking like a ton. It's just an additional 15 minutes to what he was already doing. Again, for most able-bodied people, not a huge deal. But from a pain perspective, especially persisting pain perspective, all I heard when he said that was, let's double the dosage. And if you've ever worked with people with really intense sensitivity and really, extreme symptoms at times, it's in those peaks and valleys in physical exposure to some of those stressors that they don't have a high tolerance for. That's where those flare-ups hide. And when I see double, like that definitely represents a potential peak. And even if it is just something from 15 to 30 minutes, like that's kind of the shift in perspective that I think we need to have sometimes when managing some of those more persistent, difficult cases, is that our dosage and our progressions need to be handled a little bit differently. We shouldn't just be looking at it from a fitness perspective. We should have that pain perspective in mind, because ultimately, like when it comes to rehab, people aren't necessarily seeking out rehab all the time to get more fit. They are doing it for their pain. So we need to probably adopt that perspective to stay away from some of those spikes in workload and potential flare-up situations. That's definitely something that has stood out to me, especially working with that population.
Have there been times where you've given them the freedom to explore, let's just see if this is something you want to try to do, let's see how your body reacts, and almost have a trial period of, okay, I think that this is probably going to be too high of a spike and it's going to be too much increase in volume, but what's the worst thing that could happen if we try it once? Are there ever periods where you do kind of see if it's tolerable?
Yeah, that and that really is like exactly how I communicate. It's basically an ongoing negotiation and us just trying to put our heads together and come up with the best next step. And then me teaching them as we go my thought process for how I think we should come up with the best next step, and then just learning to apply that to themselves, so that they can better manage on their own. I really make sure people understand up front that this is trial and error, that I can't predict how their pain's going to respond. In fact, they probably have a better idea of how their pain's going to respond, especially in the early stages, because they've been living with it and they know themselves, which is why like I really bring them in a ton on those decisions. Like it's not all right, we're going to do this. It's all right, do you think this would be a good step, or do you think we should go this route? Is this going to be too much? Is this going to be just right? And then asking things that way gives me so much insight too, as far as like their own psychological readiness to proceed and things like that, and their own trust in their own body, and how do they feel about this body part versus that body part, or this activity versus that activity. Leaving it open-ended like that and giving options and kind of just navigating it together like that really does help a lot. And then, the only other thing that I think about a lot with that too is like, I just ask them a ton of the time about their own prior experiences with taking certain steps like that. Like if the last time they did something similar to what we're proposing went really well and was super easy, then I'll tell them that, then larger progressions might be more feasible. But if last time you did something similar to what we're proposing went terribly, then I think smaller steps is probably the way to go. So it's never like we have to take these baby steps or we have to take these larger steps. It's just we base it on what they already know about their situation. Then I kind of lay out for them, this is what I think we could do versus this is what I think we should do. And then we just kind of negotiate back and forth from there until we're on the same page. But it is like that's patient-centeredness, right? Like it's bringing them in on the decision making and having them be really heavily handed in guiding their own management.
In a prior conversation with you, there was the conversation about back and forth benefit, pros and cons of these conversations with people with persistent pain at their house, where they're not leaving the environment of a place where they may have consistent pain. But I think you had played devil's advocate, saying that this is the way that we can find in their comfortable environment and in an intimate setting ways to discuss this and explore it. But on the other side, going somewhere and leaving that setting and being able to get out of that environment where they may be at home all day, or they may be in a place where they are kind of identifying with persistent pain. Have you thought more about that? We had that discussion about a year ago.
Well, I still stand by what I first said initially. It's nice to be able to because what you're saying is the telehealth medium allows us to literally speak to them at home where they're experiencing their symptoms. And I do like that because I think you get different answers when you ask them questions about their pain. If you're talking to them about it where they experience it the most, in the most intimate setting, which is their own home, that's where they're dealing with their problem a lot of the time on a regular basis. And they know what around their house and their household day-to-day life is most impacted by their pain. And the fact that we're talking about their pain while they're there, it's pretty top of mind, ready information. And I like also, I've had times during consults where if we need to test some things out, or I need to watch them move or have them do certain things, they're right there where if somebody's my biggest problem is I can't get up and down the stairs. Well, I can literally watch them do that on the staircase that they struggle with, because they're there where they deal with it most. So I do still like being everybody always says meet people where they're at, and telehealth kind of allows us to do that in the most literal sense possible, literally where they're at and where they exist. I've also had times where people will take their phone or their computer and bring it to the gym and do their consults at their gym where they're struggling with certain issues. And they can show me, it's a little different having somebody demonstrate painful movements and activities in a clinic setting using your equipment, but now they can kind of show you in their own environment where they struggle with it on the equipment that they struggle with it on. Really gives you kind of a more intimate peek into some of the stuff that people are having a hard time with. So yeah, I do still really like that and think that that's really valuable part of telehealth.
There's been also a conversation I had with you in the past about Ehlers-Danlos and hypermobility in general. Anything in that population that you've changed your mind about, or that's evolved over the past few years, if you had more of these individuals coming to see you?
It's actually been less. I think it's just because I've put out less content about EDS. Because like in the beginning when you and I first spoke, I had like 40% of my patients had EDS, which is insane to think about, like that many in a patient population in any context. But yeah, no, my perspective is still very much the same. I think like what I really love about them for telehealth, and there's a great paper that came out. I think part of the title was like in my own space at my own pace, and it was specifically about why, from a qualitative perspective, why telehealth can be such a good fit for people with chronic situations like EDS. And a lot of it's predicated on just they've had so many shit experiences in doctors' offices where, you know, they go in and the doctor is like making them do all their fun body contortion tricks and like, you know, marveling at the fact that, wow, you can bend like that. That's so crazy. You probably shouldn't move that way. And that doesn't work. And this doesn't work. And then ultimately going through with a treatment plan that they feel like doesn't help them anyway. Like they've had so many experiences like that and it just gets so tiresome and makes them so much more unenthusiastic about the next trip to see somebody who they're going to try and get help from, that like now with telehealth, they don't have to do that. They can, now it's our turn to meet them where they're at. And if it's going shitty, they can just end the call. I think that really gives them a little bit more of a sense of security and power over that situation, which is nice. But no, my approach with folks in that demographic has still stayed relatively the same. And I really do, like, even if it's something complicated like Ehlers-Danlos, I still manage that pretty similarly to how I'd manage pretty much any other persisting pain situation, figuring out what their goals are, how can we titrate that down into some version of those goals that they can do tomorrow? Let's start there. And I think just with Ehlers-Danlos, a lot of that, the whole conversation of fear avoidance and creating a safe environment for them to start moving before we start progressing, that just gets a little bit more weight because they do have so many experiences, you know, moving into certain ranges of motion where hell, a body part will literally like subluxate. Pretty valid why they'd feel a little bit fearful and apprehensive to do certain things. So, but luckily you can use so many different regressions and approaches to prescribing exercises and isometrics and things like that, as long as you're willing to get creative and, you know, really regress and break things down, you can still do a good job of kind of making them feel safe to move at home in their own environment, even without being there with them. So, my approach there hasn't really changed a whole lot.
You just mentioned the potential possibility of them exiting out of the call. Have you ever had a consult where someone just yeets out of the conversation because it's not going well?
I haven't, but I always am the first to let them know that they can do that if they choose to, just because I know talking to me can be a bit of a nightmare sometimes. So, but no, thankfully that has not yet happened to me. Actually, the only person who's yeeted themselves out of a call was you earlier on this very interview. Outside of that, it has not occurred.
Perfect. Do you, when you get on the call with someone for the first time, I guess prior to that, before you get on the call, do you send them an email of this is what you should expect, or these are some questions that I may ask, or things that I want to know prior to the call? What does that look like prior to actually having a conversation with them? And then once they get on, what does it look like? Do you just say, I want to hear from you what all has been going on, or tell me your story? Or do you kind of set expectations for, this is kind of what you should expect during this hour-ish period? What all does that look like?
No, man, I raw dog that shit. I go in there with a blank slate and we just let it rip. I do offer starter calls just because I know that, like, as far as telehealth goes in the musculoskeletal aches and pains area, it is still kind of in its infancy. So I offer starter calls so people can get on and ask clarifying questions before committing to a full paid consultation. And on those calls, I might tell them, okay, like, this is what a consult looks like. This is what you can expect. But outside of that, if somebody just books the consult and they just come into it, they pretty much have no idea what they're getting into. But what that pretty much ends up looking like is kind of like you just described. I sit there and say, hey, this first call, it's pretty much going to be you doing all the talking. I don't like the idea of Me pretending to know what the problem is or what the solution is the first time I talk to you. Cause hell, like I just learned about the problem 15 minutes prior. Who am I to pretend that after listening to you one time that I know exactly what we're supposed to do about this? Like I like to take some time to actually think about it rather than just pulling an answer out of my ass. So the first call is them pretty much telling me the full story, laying out a timeline for me. I'm really big on timelines, especially with persisting pain cases, because using timelines and different timestamps really does help me to help people make sense of their situation and those longer term pain issues. But then, I pretty much have them lay out the story, lay out the timeline, and then we wrap up that first call without me giving any insight as far as what I think is going on or what I think we should do about it. Because I tell them up front, I need to go over my notes. I need to take some time to actually look at this. I'm not going to be another person on that list who just knew exactly what the magic bullet was for your problem and knew the exact solution or whatever. Like, I'm going to show you that I'm putting thought into this. I'm going to organize myself before I try and explain myself to you. And I actually want to like take time to do that. So I don't actually get into those explanations until we have a follow-up call a few days later.
And is that follow-up call, how does that work? Obviously, you're going through this initial conversation. You don't know how it's going to go, but at the end of it, do you set, okay, I'd like to have another conversation in a week, or what are your thoughts about another time we can chat? What does that look like with setting up the next conversation?
Yeah, so I usually try to set up my schedule so I've got spaces open for those calls, because I like to have a quick turnaround. I don't like to leave them hanging for too long after they've already laid out the full story for me. So I try to have it, within the next 3 to 4 days, just so I can give myself a little bit of a buffer to go over those notes, organize, make sure I feel like I actually know what's going on. And then we try to have a quick turnaround within the next few days. And then on that call, I'll let them know up front at the end of the first call that, okay, on this one, I will be doing a little bit more talking first. If you need help making sense of what's going on, we'll do that. If you don't really give a shit, because I've had people tell me, I don't really give a shit what's happening or to have this explained to me or to know what the problem is. I just want to figure out a way out of this. Then for those people, I won't spend as much time helping them try to make sense of it. But if trying to understand what's happening is a high priority, I'll use that timeline they laid out and try to just kind of come up with a logical explanation for, like, based on their experiences and the things that happened, why does this body part still hurt? And I found that using timelines like that and, looking at different fluctuations in activity and life stressors and life events and all those kinds of things like that, I've found that I can help people make sense of those persisting pain situations in a way that doesn't involve a lot of silly pain neuroscience, doesn't involve a lot of overly complex explanations. Really, a lot of the time is so simple and, in my mind, like reasonable that I don't think if any of my colleagues ever heard the way I explain these things using those timelines that I'd really get much pushback, because I do just try to make it as simple and fit to their own story as I can. So we go through that. I give them a lot of opportunities to, and I tell them up front, like, if there's something that doesn't make sense or I'm screwing up on something, make sure you push back and tell me. I don't want you to just hold on to those thoughts and try to be overly polite. Like, we should talk about this. That's what this time is for. So give them lots of chances to ask questions, make sure everything's super, super clear. And then once we're on the same page, then I get into, okay, this is what I think might be a good thing for us to do about that. And then once I've kind of laid out what I think a good approach to management would be, that's when I ask them, this is what I think should be done. How much involvement do you feel like you need on my end to make that happen? Because some people, they'll hear me go through that explanation and the light bulb will just go on. They're like, I've never looked at it that way. I think I know exactly what I need to do. And for them, that one-off advice was enough. They don't need to work with me. They can take that and run with it. And if it doesn't go well for them, they can jump on email support or rehab coaching somewhere down the road. So I always give people the option to proceed with no care if they feel like they have the self-efficacy to take what I just said and run with it. And then if I ask them, how much help do you think you need on this? Some other people might be like, I know what you're saying, but I want you in my back pocket as a resource as I go. Then I put them on email support. And then other people like, it sounds good, but I have no idea what the fuck to do, then we'll go through actual rehab coaching and I'll kind of guide them through that situation with take a little bit more of an involved approach to it. But yeah, we kind of proceed from there based on their own self-confidence in managing based on kind of what I was proposing.
And if it's a longer term rehab coaching, is that still through email or do you use something in particular?
So for coaching, email support is included with it, but basically what I've done since making the shift away from sending programs and towards coaching people through things, is basically they get as many calls with me as they need until they feel like they understand how I approach coming up with exercises, coming up with progressions, finding starting points to doing things, and self-managing those situations. So sometimes people need lots of calls to get the approach and figure out how to do it. Sometimes people need like 2 and then they just rip it. Sometimes people disappear for 3 months and then hit me up and they're like, hey, I haven't done anything yet. Let's start now. And I say, great. It's kind of different for everybody, but it is still just video call and email. That's pretty much it.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit to social media. And
Sure.
I'm very curious now that you've been rocking and rolling with TikTok, Instagram. Those are primarily the only 2. Is that right?
Yep, those are the only 2.
How over the past 2 years has that changed from initial topics, interest and frequency of doing those till now? What all has changed?
Interest and frequency of doing those is a good way to put it. That has changed. And I think you could see that from just looking at my content over the last several months. Man, I think more has changed about my social media than probably I'm even aware. Like, I think if I were to go back and scroll through a bunch of my old content versus now, I think I'd probably see more differences than I even realized. But I think the biggest ones that I am aware of, I definitely post less often now because for a few reasons. One, I just don't need to as much anymore because, I can fill out my schedule with just one post now, and I've got enough awareness generated now, and the algorithms recirculate old videos now enough where I don't really have to worry about filling out a schedule based on social media content volume anymore. And then the other thing is too, like, I'm busy enough now with not only working with clients, but also with the stuff I'm doing with like continuing ed courses and things that me and Jake Harden are trying to develop, that I don't always have as much time as I had in that first year to make videos on a consistent basis anymore, because I am just a one-man show. I don't have other people helping me out. So sometimes it gets a little tough to keep up with pumping out consistent content. I mean, for that first year, I was doing at least 2 videos a day for about a year straight, which was like, if I tried to keep that volume now, I wouldn't last more than a couple days. It'd be crazy. I haven't posted anything new on Instagram or TikTok in over a week. And like, that would never happen the first year. And then the other part of it is, I think, just burnout on it too. Like, social media is just such for somebody who's got this evidence-based perspective and values like a science-based approach, and having read all the papers we've read and talked about all the things we've talked about, boy, it really kicks you in the nuts when you go through and see the shittiest, stupidest fucking videos getting 5 million views, and I can't get, 10,000 on a video about a good evidence-based approach to fucking plantar fasciitis. Like, that stuff does eat at you after a while, to the point, like, for me, I don't know if it's like a weird form of like PTSD. Sometimes I can't get myself to open up the TikTok app, because I know the second I open it, if I look through like 3 videos, I'll just start getting upset. Like, that really does happen. And it really does kind of beat you down after a while. So I think that also contributes a little bit to the volume and maybe the shift in my tone too. I used to, this is really the sad changes that happened. If you look back at my old content, I used to do like comedy skits all the fucking time. Like, I had so many skit type videos on musculoskeletal pain and evidence-based care back in the day, because it was just so much more happy-go-lucky and I wasn't so beaten down then. Now it's all like just boring lecture-y. Like, I still let my personality bleed into it, so it's not so dry. But now it is like, I don't do skits anymore just because, like, Nothing kills your spirit more than making an evidence-based musculoskeletal pain comedy skit, have that shit flop, and then go see a 10-second video on some horse shit go crazy, crazy viral. And you put all this time like that does eat away after a while. So I think that's definitely contributed to less volume and maybe a shift in tone over time too.
Early on, when there was those explosions of you could have 100,000 plus views and there's, I'm assuming, thousands of comments, did that change as well? Just the amount of time you spent either discussing or arguing through those comments and even reading them versus now?
You know what? That's what's crazy is I feel like I still know how to pop off on there when I want to. Not as much on IG, but definitely on TikTok. Like I literally made a video, I think a week ago, and I was like, this is going to get 500,000 views. And I put it on there and it did right away. Like, so I still feel like I know how to do that. Even though a lot of people do say that views and engagement is way, way down especially on TikTok, but even some people have been saying IG as well. I've never known how to crack the IG code, so I've never really had much engagement there. But as far as how much will I engage with that, it's still fairly high because you still do get that kind of like, if you do have something pop off, you get that little bit of rush and you want to kind of keep stoking the flame. So like that sometimes will get me into comment sections. Plus I just like talking shit and like I like being kind of mean to people online. So that'll pull me into comment sections too sometimes.
Yeah, you rattle.
I'm a little cyberbully, bro. Like I'll fucking tell somebody to fuck off. I'll do all that stuff.
So does it not just keep you up at night? Are you not just angry all the time?
Yeah, I am. I'm always pissed. No, I'm actually really good at compartmentalizing. I wasn't as good at this early on, but I'm really good at it now. When I'm done for the day, I don't think about this shit. Like I go out with my friends. They won't even talk to me about my work life at all because I think they know that I'll start thinking about the social media stuff and all of a sudden I'll get, that Arthur meme where he's got his fist clenched. Like I'll turn into that guy a little bit. So no, I'm able to separate myself from it. When I'm outside of it, I don't really talk about it much. I think my biggest fear is like, if I start going on a whole bunch of dates, I don't know what to say when people ask me what I do for work because I have no idea how to describe it or talk about it outside of when I'm actually in a work context. But no, I have gotten pretty good at stepping outside of it and still keeping high spirits when I'm not, Plus, and I fucking love patient care. Like I really, really love doing telehealth and working with people. That lifts me up during the day. Like when social media makes me want to like just fucking slam my head in a door 1,000 times, the thing that pulls me out of it the most during the workday is getting on a call and talking with somebody and helping them try to solve a problem at a difficult time in their lives. Like I do still really love that. And like I definitely see myself stopping social media and retiring from that as soon as I ever possibly could. But I could see myself sticking with patient care and keeping that part of my work life up for a long, long time just because I genuinely like it that much. So there is bits and pieces that I do really love. There's just one big social media part that sometimes makes me want to just fucking scream into the abyss.
How do you know when you'd be able to call it quits on social media?
When I got racks on racks on racks, son. When I got money falling out my I don't know, bro. I have no idea. I really don't know. I hope some kind of sign. Maybe I'll have a heart attack one day and that'll be it. I'll just be like, okay, maybe I should stop now. But yeah, I have no idea. I don't have a preset end goal in mind. I mean, obviously I got to get some of the projects done that I've already kind of gotten the works. Like me and Jake have 2 more courses that we're trying to put out within the next couple of months. So obviously putting that out and promoting that, I'm going to have to, going to have a couple years of pushing that. So definitely no change in social media as far as me dipping out in the immediate future, but maybe a little bit beyond that. We'll see.
What has been the most controversial, I guess the most watched video that you've had and the most controversial, if those are 2 separate ones? I
think, I don't actually know. I've got a few videos on TikTok that are around the 8 to 9. I think one's even 10. I've got like a handful that are 8 to 10 million. God damn it. What were those videos of? I know one for sure was There's like a super famous YouTube chiropractor spewing a bunch of horse shit about how it's going up and down this girl's spine and finding how, okay, this one's rotated this way, so we got to push it that way. And I basically just took this video and fucking skewered it. And like, I would let him talk for 5 seconds and I would jump in and be like, that's horseshit. And then I'd say why. And then let him talk for 5 more seconds. And like, I was going second for second with everything he was saying. I was just, nope, no, nope. And I actually liked that one because the trick that you have to like still like yourself when you do the debunky video thing is I feel okay about doing debunking type videos as long as I'm able to nestle in and hide good information in the debunk. Like if I'm just getting on and dunking on someone saying that's horseshit, but not providing any value on the back end, even if it's like subliminally hidden in there, then I don't feel good about that. And I don't like making that kind of stuff. So if you ever watch my debunk misinformation type videos closely, you'll see a real effort in there to keep nestling in what I think is good and important and useful information for the viewer to receive. And that one I did really like because I was able to not only fucking shred this idiot and get 10 million views on it, but also put a lot of good stuff in there that like I genuinely would want any layperson to know about spine pain. Those are my favorite type of like misinformation videos to do, is when I can have a nice balance between being an ass, but also like helping in some way. It was something with spinal manipulation.
What are those projects that you and Jake are working on right now?
So the first thing we did was last year. Wow, holy shit, we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of it. Last year we put out a course called Why Telehealth, which was a small course on how to implement telehealth and do it well, for either people who want a full online telehealth practice or people who just want to make telehealth part of an already existing in-person situation. And the whole crux of the course was I just wanted to make something to show people how truly, and Sam, you can attest to this because I know you're very well versed with telehealth too, how truly easy it can be. And it doesn't have to be fancy bells and whistles. It can be really, really simple. It's not that hard. Because I do think one barrier for clinicians who are sitting on the fence about should I get involved with telehealth or make it an option for my patients, I think a lot of them, it's like that problem of like you don't know what you don't know. And they feel like they can't get started because they don't know what they're missing, or if they're missing some big important piece that would allow them to do a quality job that keeps them from stepping in. The whole crux of that course was to say, this is the bare bones necessities. And if you have this and this only, you're doing as good as anyone else out there, and everything else is just bells and whistles. So we get into the bells and whistles a little, but really the crux of the course was to show people how easy it can be. So yeah, we're coming up on a year of having that put out. Really happy with how well that did. We'll probably do some updates for that in the near future. And then what we have coming out, hopefully in the summertime, is a patient-facing course on self-management. So basically how I've been describing, like how I've shifted towards more coaching and trying to give people the skill set of self-management. We're trying to put that into a course so that people could hopefully learn that skill set with navigating pain and movement without having to actually like see us. So that is kind of the project we're working on right now. And then also on the back end of that, starting to look into developing a clinician version, because there has been, since the Why Telehealth one came out, some level of demand for like, what is your actual approach when you're doing telehealth to teaching self-management and supporting self-management. So we'll make a clinician version of that too on the back end. But right now, the primary focus is this patient-facing idea that we've been working on.
Do you have many students or new grads, whether it's PTs or chiropractors, that reach out and are wanting to go straight into a full-time telehealth model? Are there any things that you've actually pushed someone in the other direction of saying, I think you should go in clinic and wait, or do a hybrid model? Are there any things you can play like devil's advocate for the downsides of full-time remote?
Yeah. I think I've mostly if people ask, because usually people know what they want when they come to me asking for guidance, they either know that they want to do fully online or a hybrid version. But if they're not sure, I usually push them towards hybrid because I feel like that's an easier leap to make because it's already got a good dose of what you're used to. And all you're doing if you make a hybrid model is you're just adding value for your patients. Like it's not like you're taking anything away from them or removing any services. You're just adding more options. So I usually push people in that direction. Sam, you can probably attest to that as well. I think hybrid probably makes more sense for the majority of clinicians in our space, especially because I do sometimes wonder if you don't have a massive social media following, how feasible a fully online service is. Because obviously, like I have no experience of offering a fully online service without having hundreds of thousands of followers to market that service to. I don't really know what that would look like if I didn't have that. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit, but that's usually the direction I push people is a hybrid version.
Yeah, even now I still am operating in a hybrid setting, and I think that it is really difficult for someone to begin fully online in a telehealth situation.
Yeah.
Even if they don't have, or even if they do have a big online presence, just because it can be very challenging for a lot of people to come from the traditional school setting and understand how to operate in the telehealth setting, at least if you haven't taken the time to learn all the different things that you discussed, because what do you do in telehealth if you come from a traditional school setting? It can be a very difficult way to operate and understand how to provide meaningful benefit for your patients. At least that's the way that my schooling went, I would say, and that may have updated during the last 2 years, where people are now having this larger presence in telehealth. However, from talking to a lot of people that want to do this, they're just not sure what to do. And then
that's why they got to take my course, baby.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Honestly, I think there is a huge need for a course like that. Exactly. And with that, yeah, when I talk to a lot of people that are in the hybrid setting, and they're very successful with it. Usually it's a combination of where they might be starting with someone in person and then transitioning to online. And whether it's a strength coach, a physio, or chiropractor, I've seen tons of people be very successful with it, because oftentimes, like, if you are exercise focused, if you are load management focused, whatever concept you want to operate under, you can often be you can be very effective quickly in person, teach the principles, and then transition that person to a self-management route, often just 1 to 2 in-person appointments. And then from there, it's guidance and just being there as that assisting, overarching principal person.
Yeah, and that was what was really nice too about having Jake make the project with me and have him come in and talk during the course and like have modules in there where he's speaking, because I've only ever been fully online telehealth, but he has plenty of experience doing a hybrid model. And he said literally all the same stuff that you say. So it was nice to have him be a part of that and talk to people, to have him talking on the course about how can you implement it into a hybrid model. How could you either make that, or how could you integrate telehealth into an already existing one? He had a lot of really useful things to say about that, and it was right in line with pretty much everything you just said.
Any other final thoughts or questions, Sam, on your end? Or Aaron, anything else you feel like we didn't chat about?
Nope.
When you're working with people in the whole process, and you're doing the unlimited email option, or whatever you want to describe it as, so full-on comprehensive rehab coaching, do you put a limit? Like, at the end of the day, if someone literally wanted to talk to you every single day, do you have the time for that?
I certainly do not have the time for that. So that's funny. I didn't initially, when I made that option, put a limit on it. And it was actually Jake who gave me the advice. He was like, hey man, maybe you should put a cutoff in there, not only to keep your own sanity, but also like from a business perspective, it's probably just not a wise idea to offer open-ended forever email support to people, which is what I was doing. So he told me I should put a 6-month cutoff in there, and that's what I did. But what I've found is, like, for the email support option, when people use it, like, people people don't fucking like sending emails. So they really only tap into it and use it and reach out to me for support when they really, really need support. I don't have people, hounding me with emails day in and day out. I do have to answer a lot of emails because I do have a lot of people using that email support option, but I found that like people hate sending emails just as much as I do. So they're really only using that service that they're paying for when they really feel like they need it. And that usually only comes with like some of the bigger roadblocks that people might run into as far as either flare-ups or just not knowing how to progress, things like that. But yeah, we did have to put some limitations in place because I'm not a great business person. I think that's not lost on anyone. So yeah, I did have to make some adjustments early on with that.
Yeah, I'm entirely with you. I definitely never claim to be a good business person, and I have a very similar business model, and I have allowed, or I used to say that I would respond to their email very quickly, and I left it kind of vague, and then I would get someone that would email me, and then if I didn't respond in an hour, I'd get a subsequent email, and then I get another email, and another. I had one person email me 8 times in 24 hours because I hadn't responded to their initial email, and it was on like a Sunday, and I was like, wow, this is just. So I started to have to put like a thing that it said like I have up to 36 hours to respond to the initial email, and even with that, like sometimes it's just I will respond to you soon if the person seems like they're really concerned, but just so that people are aware, like I'm a human, I still have a life to exist, and I'm not like I don't actually check my email on my phone anymore because I can't handle it.
No, I'm the same way. That's like I said earlier, if I would feel like anxiousness about getting into TikTok because like the wave of comments and mentions would make me feel and I couldn't open it. I was the same way with my email because I had just not because I would feel anxious about those emails, but there'd be so many that it would just be a little overwhelming. So I've got certain hours in my day that are blocked off for that. And then also I do tell people on the front end, like I want to give thoughtful replies, so they're not going to be immediate. I always tell people the longest it could take to get a reply from me is about 4 days. And then I always tell people too, I don't reply to those support emails over the weekend. So I put those two kind of parameters in place on the front end when they're asking about the service, I always make sure people know that. Yeah. Cause I don't want to give thoughtless, useless replies. I want to put thought into it, and I don't want them to expect that they're going to hear back right away. But holy shit, I can't imagine getting 8 emails from one person in 24 hours. I think I would just tell them, here, you can have your money back. I don't think this is going to work out.
Well, that is a one that people probably don't hear about is I have had to refund people because they're just either not in line with the philosophy, B, not a great match for the online setting, telehealth, whatever you would like to call it, or they just have unrealistic expectations.
I've had to do that too. I've had 2 people that I've refunded for those exact same reasons.
Yeah.
And it was me who made the call on one of them, and then it was the other person who made the call on the other one. Not them demanding a refund, but them saying like, I don't think this is for me. And they were going to be all nice about it and just be like, no, keep the money. I shouldn't have gotten into this in the first place. I was like, please let me give you this money back before I lose sleep over this and start to feel bad. But I've had that happen too. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've gotten better at being able to screen it to a degree because there are times where I do a consultation and I'm just upfront that, I think you'd be better off just going to see someone in person. I'll try to find someone to help you with that because there are people that just are so anxious about the online setting, or if they are, for instance, like, I think in chronic pain, it's a little bit easier. Whereas if someone does have an acute injury, and it might not be like a strain, but like, for instance, I had someone that had an ACL repair, and they wanted me to do from day one their rehab. And I was like, I don't know if that's going to be the best for you. You'd probably be better off seeing someone, at least in the early stages, in person.
Yep. No, I feel the same way. And I think for me, it's a little easier because I talk about telehealth so frequently, and I talk about self-management, remote management enough in my videos where like the people who follow me, they know it's a fully online service. So they kind of know what they're getting into. So I don't have to worry as much about like, are they going to be a good fit or are they not? But the one that I have had to watch out for is like when sometimes people will book with me and tell me they were attracted to the idea because they think it would be good to have that level of accountability. But I tell people straight up, this isn't an accountability service. Like I'm not checking in on people to make sure they're staying up on things. If they fall off, they fall off. Like I tell people all the time, like I might give them a little nudge initially, but there is a level of responsibility that patients have when they work with me to take advantage of the services that they're paying for. I'm not here to, this isn't life coaching. This isn't, I'm not a personal trainer. I'm there as a resource for them, and I give them that and they pay for that, but they got to have some buy-in on their end to actually utilize those services. So, I always warn people when they're like, yeah, I just like the idea of having someone to keep me accountable. I straight up say, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to keep you accountable. If you're not accountable, you're probably going to fall off and waste a bunch of your money.
Yeah, no, I entirely agree. That's an example there where I had to tell someone that it wasn't going to work out, because I do email pretty much all of my clients towards basically today, Friday. I'll email everybody and check in if they haven't contacted me already. However, for some people, like I had this.
Do you automate that, or are you writing out each one, or do you automate that on those Fridays?
I do it personally, yeah. Again, I'm not a very good business person.
Savage, you psychopath! Oh my god.
And but yeah, I had a person that signed up for coaching, and she mentioned that she was really looking for the accountability side of things, and she's like, I just want you to email me every day and check in if I did my workout and if I was doing the things that we had discussed for like adjusting my postural changes, changing these things to like not be symptom. And I'm like, I'm not gonna do
that. I'm sorry, I don't know who you think I am, but it ain't happening.
Like
I feel that.
And she was kind of like shocked that I said that at first, but I like gave her an explanation of like, do you realize the time investment that you're looking for, and like realistics, like if you were to go see someone on a regular basis and like the time investment that would come to this, like sometimes people come, cause I don't know what you charge, but I think that the online option that I provide is a much more affordable rehab choice for people compared to going to see someone in person. But a fact of that is that I also am less time intensive on my part than if I saw someone 2-3 hours every single week for treatment, like that would be a fortune. And so then if you want me to email you 5 days a week, that would be quite a big investment on my part.
No, that's how I scaled. Like I said earlier, the management options with me are contingent upon my level of involvement. So that's why I scale the pricing that same way too. Because like in a cash model, a lot of times people are just being paid for their time, and I'm very much the same way. Like coaching involves a lot of my time and a lot more effort for me, so that costs more. And then email support, it takes a lot less because most of the people who are on my email support, I'm not hearing from them more than once every 2 weeks. So that's not nearly the same time involvement. But yeah, I'm checking it on somebody every day. No shot. If they're not paying me goddamn 10 grand a week, we're not doing that shit.
Well, I do know a strength and conditioning coach who offers like a service like that, but he calls it his I can't remember, something along the lines of like premium package, and he charges $3,000 a month for the service. And so like
that's premium as hell.
And he told me he has like 3 people that do that, and so
hey,
like if that's idea. What you want and that's what you're willing to pay, I just couldn't imagine ever pay like I've had coaches in the past, and like I couldn't possibly comprehend paying $3,000 for a coach.
Dude, I'm the cheapest bastard you've ever met. I didn't have a computer that was strong enough to do this interview. I'm at my neighbor's house. I wasn't willing to go get a better computer or update my processor or anything, so I get you there too.
Yeah, for all the people watching, we got to give a big, huge shout out to Aaron's neighbor, because this is a wonderful, wonderful podcast we've got going on, and huge appreciation.
His house is way nicer than mine too, so I'm actually happy to be here.
All right, on that note, we'll call it there. That was a good end. All right. Thank you so much, Aaron, for coming on. This was great.